a vote disparity between the PDP and APC candidates that was 12,000 votes. However, we had a vote tally, a cancellation of votes that was 19,000 votes. INEC went ahead to declare the APC candidate winner. Now, it begs the question, why? Why was the candidate declared winner there, and the candidate, the PDP candidate here, cannot be declared winner? Why the double standards? Now, we believe that even by the application of double standards in its elections or in its processes, INEC confirms two things. One, what we also believe, that cancelled votes don't go, once votes are cancelled, they go to no issue, as unfair as it may sound. That once votes are cancelled, they go to no issue. And the second fear, which also spills over into the possibilities of a general election next year, is that INEC isn't always true to its own guidelines, INEC isn't always true to its own processes, and at times, INEC is willing to be used as a tool. I know that there are people of integrity there, and I respect their integrity. However, when you see the inconsistency in the application of our laws, the inconsistency in the application of INEC guidelines, the inconsistency in the application of rules of practice and procedure, you have no, I mean, it's almost impossible to reach a conclusion that sometimes these things are being manipulated towards a specific end. And the end is that it should favor the party in power.
Okay, let me put you on pause for a minute or two and bring in Mr. Shola Fasure. He's the media advisor to the governor of Osun State. He joins us via Skype from Osogbo. I want to thank you so much indeed for joining us on Sunrise Daily this morning. Now, this is what Mr. Onoja is saying to us. He says that INEC has basically not followed through the processes in coming to declare that the elections are inconclusive. What are your immediate reactions to that?
Thank you. What PDP is trying to do is to erode the legitimacy of all Nigerian institutions in the futile bid and their desperate bid to win the election. There are two issues. The Electoral Act is part of the laws of the Federation. It's a national law. It's not an INEC bylaw. It's not a whimsical rule. The Electoral Act, I'm really shocked that people can come on national television and then delegitimize the laws of the Federation. If you have problems with a law, you first of all challenge the law in a court. If the court invalidates that law, then it becomes invalid. But this law was legitimately made by the National Assembly and assented to by the President. So it becomes a living law of the Federation. So you cannot come and then say this law, a Nigerian law, is invalid. Anybody who does that is being unpatriotic.
If you allow me to just come in, are you saying that the guidelines of INEC supersedes the Constitution of the Federal Republic?
This is not about any laws. The supremacy clause in the Constitution is very clear. It says that if any other law is inconsistent with the Constitution, that law is invalid to the extent of that inconsistency. But the law is not inconsistent with the Constitution. And anyway, a law is law until it is set aside. It is very clear. The precedents are very clear. The sections are very clear. And we have sufficient precedents. We've had legal luminaries explain these things, that the law is consistent. Look,
okay, Mr. Fasure, if you just allow me to butt in here so we can have a to and fro conversation. If you say that this is being misinterpreted, then how do you reconcile the fact that those criterias that will allow a candidate to become governor were met in these elections, and yet the elections were judged as inconclusive? How do you interpret that?
Look, the law itself, the election itself is an ongoing thing as we speak now. The law has not been concluded. It's a process. Let the process run out. After the outcome of the process, then you have a voice. this idea of delegitimizing the election and trying to short-circuit the process because you feel you are not going to win, it's in itself unpatriotic and destructive of the Nigerian state and its institution. And we must be very careful what we are promoting, because it's a double-edged sword.
Mr. Fasure,
both ways.
Mr. Fasure, if I may come in here, I don't think we're promoting anything here, but let's look at things clearly. For one, you've just said here on television that the INEC guideline is a law legitimized by the president. Is that what you said?
I'm not the one who say it. That is what it is.
Is the INEC guideline a law of Nigeria? Are you saying
it's a law of the Federation? The Electoral Act was legitimately.
No, you said the INEC guideline. The INEC guideline is the question, is what you mentioned. The guideline used by INEC to conduct the elections, you said is a law of the land.
We are talking of the elective provisions of the Electoral Act that gave. We are not just 2010.
Mr. Fasure, we're having issues with the network. Let's hope that that can be rectified real quick before we go ahead. But if you can hear me, there are incidences. For instance, Mr. Onoja mentioned the situation that happened in August in Kogi, where there was a difference in the votes registered to the APC and to the PDP, and yet INEC went ahead to declare the APC winner of that election, even though the cancelled votes were in more than the number of, more than the difference between the two leading contestants.
The result was held up until the rerun was held, and nothing. We waited until the election was.
Mr. Fasure, we would come back to you when this issue is rectified so that we can hear you clearly. But for the moment, let's return to Mr. Onoja. Mr. Onoja, you are a lawyer, and having heard what Mr. Fasure said, how do you react to that?
Yes, please. We exist in a constitutional democracy. We exist in a constitutional democracy where one of the fundamental keys of our democracy is the right to freedom of speech and expression. I think that anybody who says that he considers free speech and lawful debate over issues and circumstances in our country, I think anybody who says that free speech over such national events and issues is unpatriotic is himself unpatriotic. I think that anybody who muzzles dissent or who believes that there should be no dissent and that dissent in itself unpatriotic has more than a little bit of a hangover from a military regime. It is well within our rights to speak about, to discuss. And we're doing that here in the fourth estate of any democracy, the media. Nobody is advocating violence. Nobody is advocating negativity. We are saying that we will go to court to test the laws of our land. If anything, there should be commendation. If we're saying that let us test the constitutional jurisprudence of our country to see where the limits of our rights, liberties, and freedoms as Nigerian people are, there should be commendation. I don't see why anybody should be offended that a political party duly registered with a candidate in an election, with a candidate who is winning the election, who, to our mind, has won the election, a political party says we want to discuss what the issues, the constitutional issues, what the legal issues, what the political issues are. And you say that's delegitimizing the elections or constituted authority? That makes no sense. And I say this most respectfully. It is a fundamental part of any democratic organization that we should be able to engage in this nature of back and forth. It is the only way we'll deepen our democracy. And my political party, my principal, are committed as much as possible to deepening that democracy.
All right, thank you, Mr. Onoja. Let's get back to you, Mr. Fasure. I understand we've been able to rectify that matter. Now, that question I asked you had to do with the election, by-elections into the National Assembly senatorial by-election in Kogi, the leading parties were APC and PDP. The difference between them was 17 or 19,600, or cancelled votes, 19,960 votes were cancelled. But the difference between was 12,000 or thereabout, and the election was awarded, or the victory was awarded to the APC candidate. How does that apply? Whoa, we've lost Mr. Fasure again. Mr. Fasure, are you there?
On here, please repeat the question.
Okay, so the question I asked is, that by-election into the National Assembly, senatorial by-election, APC was winning with about 26,860 votes. PDP had 14,845 votes. The difference, 12,015 votes. Cancelled votes, 19,960. But INEC went ahead to declare the APC the winner, seeing that the cancelled votes were more than the difference between the two leading candidates. How does that work out?
Look, I am not in a position to speak for INEC on this matter. INEC has its own rules and makes its own judgment. It's not the APC that declared itself winner in any election. We wait patiently for election to conclude, and then we act based on the results.
Okay. Now, I asked the question. No, if I may comment, I asked the question because Mr. Onoja brought up the issue of inconsistency in INEC's application of its guidelines.
It's not an APC issue. The inconsistency that you are pointing out about INEC is not an APC issue. An APC cannot defend INEC. We only speak on what concerns us, especially on this Osun election. The guidelines are very clear. The Constitution is the ground norm. It doesn't speak about details.
Okay,
the Constitution
Mr. Fasure,
set the framework.
Please hold your thoughts, Mr. Fasure. Can you just hold your thoughts? We'll go on a quick break. We'll come back so that I can continue your response to that question. Someone will be back in a moment. Please don't go away.